Thank you for joining me for another video. If you remember from last week, we began the story of Cain and Abel. I mentioned last week that there were two reasons that the book, or that this entire story was included in the Torah. There are two reasons that it's there. Everything that's in the Torah obviously is there for multiple reasons. This one happens to be there for to teach. It all comes to teach us something, but this one teaches us two things. The first one I mentioned last week, which is that Cain and God have this little discussion. Cain loses his temper a little bit, and God steps in and says, "Hey, listen, if you don't watch your temper, if you don't control your temper, if you don't watch yourself, as we used to say back in the day, if you don't check yourself, you will wreck yourself. If you don't control your temper, you're going to do something that you can't take back." So this week, we actually get into what it is that he did that he couldn't take back. Spoiler alert, Cain killed his brother. Fratricide, very big deal. The second reason that, or the second most important thing, I should say, that the story teaches us is actually in the aftermath of the killing of Abel. And we're going to get into that when the time comes, but I'll just go ahead and throw this out there. It was the fact that Cain was actually given mercy because it was not an intentional murder. He didn't intentionally kill his brother, and we're going to see why that is in the text. So, I'm doing my glasses. Here they are. Let's go ahead and get into it. Last week we ended with verse 7 of chapter 4, so we're going to begin in verse 8. So it says, وَيُمَرْ قَيْنَ الْهَبِلْ أَحِيُّ, and Cain said to his brother Abel, and we're going to talk about that in just a second, why exactly it says, that he said something to his brother and then doesn't actually tell us what he says. So it says, find it, verse 8. وَيُمَرْ قَيْنَ الْهَبِلْ أَحِيُّ, and Cain said to Hevel, his brother, وَيْهِ بِيُثَّمْ بَصْدَى وَيَقَمْ قَيْنَ الْهَبِلْ أَحِيُّ وَيَهَرْجَهُ. So it says that Cain, he spoke to his brother, he said to his brother Abel, he says Hevel, and then it doesn't actually tell us what he says there, and I'll talk about that in just a second. Then it says, it happened while they were in the field that Cain rose up against Hevel, his brother, and he slew him, he killed him. Right? And so one of the things that is kind of important that I point out, because it is going to play a role later on in this video, is what did Cain say to Abel to get him to go out there? Well, so the text of the Masoretic doesn't tell us, but if you remember from back before, when I was in my Torah Tradition series, actually brought up the Samaritan and the Septuagint, which actually do tell us in this passage what Cain says to Hevel to get him to go out into the field in the first place. And so those passages, those versions, those textual variants say something along the lines of Cain spoke to Hevel, his brother, and he said, let's go out to the field. We'll get into why exactly later on. But for right now, Cain says, let's go out into the field. And it happened while they were in the field that Cain rose up and he slew his brother. He killed his brother Abel. Verse 9. وَيُمَرْ Hashem el Qain. Hashem says to Qain, Ehev lahicha, where is your brother Abel? وَيُمَرْ lo yadati hashomer achi anochi. He says, listen, why would I know? I don't know. He says, am I my brother's guardian? Am I his keeper? I think most translations say, am I my brother's keeper? And very quickly, I'm just going to go ahead and answer that. That is, Qain presents it as a rhetorical question, but I'm going to answer it anyway. Yeah, you are your brother's keeper. You are his guardian. If you know that he's about to do something stupid, or if you know that he is doing something stupid, something that will cause harm in some way, injury, bodily injury, death, loss of property, property damages, that sort of a thing. Yeah, you absolutely have an obligation, not just I feel like it, so I guess I'll say something. No, you have an obligation to speak up and to say something. If you care about someone and you see that they're about to do something that they shouldn't be doing, you should speak up and you should say something. So there's the answer to the third question, I think, that's asked in the entire Torah. Yeah, you are your brother's keeper. So, let's jump down to verse 10. Wayomer, and he said, Me'asitha, what is this that you've done? Qul deme'ahecha so'akim elai min hadama. He says, the voice of, literally the bloods, the plural of blood, of your brother, it cries out to me from the ground. Wa'ata, and now, this is verse 11, arurata min hadama. There is a curse upon you from the ground. Literally, it's something more along the lines of cursed are you from the ground. He goes on to say exactly what that is. Asher patzta et piha leqahath et dame'ahecha miyadecha, which has opened up its mouth. This is metaphorical language. It's opened up its mouth to leqahath et dame'ahecha, to receive, to accept the blood of your brother from your hand. Ki, this is where he gets into what that means. Cursed are you from the ground. Ki tharavod et adama, and when you, it should be that when you work the ground, lo thosef tet kohah lach, it's not going to yield to you its strength. Okay, your harvest isn't going to be as good as it was before. Not wanadti yuvaras, you are going to be a vagrant. You're going to be a vagabond, if you will. That's just a fun word to say. And a wanderer on the earth, right? So why is the earth not going to yield its strength to Qain? Well, it may actually be connected to the fact that he's being exiled. He's being moved to a different location. Perhaps the soil there is not so good by comparison with where they were. Yeah, it probably really was not that hospitable. وَيُمَرْ قَيْنْ el Hashem, and so Qain, he says to Hashem, Gadol Gawoni Minso. He says, this my sin, my iniquity, it's too much for me to bear. Notice how this is not the the statement of a man who, with malice and premeditation, murdered his brother. This is someone who's contrite. This is someone who's broken already. He's devastated over the death of his brother. I mean, he loses his temper and he realizes, my God, what have I done? I've killed my brother. I love him. Loved. Love. Still love, even though he's not here. You know, that sort of a thing, right? He's conflicted with himself, and he says, listen, my sin, it's too much for me to bear. That's not how murderers talk. A murderer might say, my punishment is too much. A murderer might say, I didn't do it. But he's not going to say, I've sinned and it's too much for me to bear. Because now he has to live with the knowledge that he killed his brother. He has to go through life knowing not only did he kill his brother, but he can't see his family anymore. He's being exiled. He's a wanderer, right? That the word that's used for a wanderer here, nod, it comes up later on. It's actually about to come up again in this verse. So in verse, what is this, 14? Hen, behold, this is still Cain speaking. Hen, gerashta othi hayom me'al pnei hadama u'mepnecha esather wahayithi na wenod ba'aretz wahaya chol mosi yahargeni. So his concern now is, he says, listen, behold, you've banished me, you've exiled me, you're sending me out of here today from the face of the earth. What does from the face of the earth mean? He's saying, you know, it honestly would be better if I were dead. He's saying, you know, you just banish me from living. He says, and can I be hidden from your face, from your presence? I'm going to be a vagabond, a vagrant, a homeless man, if you will, and a wanderer on the earth. And it'll happen that whoever should find me will kill me. His concern is not for his own life here, really. You know, he says, listen, my sin, it's too much for me to bear. Listen, you're sending me away. You may as well just kill me, because you're sending me away from your presence. Can I really hide from you? Then he says, and oh yeah, by the way, whoever sees me, whoever finds me along the way, this is another hint that Adam and his group of people are not the only people on the earth. Whoever finds me, you know, they'll kill me. Vayomer lo Hashem, Hashem says to him, Lachen, therefore, kal horeg Cain shivathaim yuqam vayasem Hashem laCain oth levilti hakoth otho kal moso. So he says, therefore, whoever kills Cain, literally sevens. I don't know if you knew this, but apparently seven is the singular and sevens is the plural. I don't know how that works in English, but that's what it says in Hebrew. It's understood to mean, you know, whoever kills Cain before, let's say, 7 generations is up. I think is a good way to interpret that. He says he will be punished. He's going to suffer the wrath of God here. It says that, and so Hashem put a mark on Cain, a mark like a sign on Cain, so that whoever meets him would not kill him. وَيَسِفْ قَيْنْ مِلْفَنَّاء Hashem, and it says that and Qain he went out from the presence of Hashem. وَيَشِفْ أَيَرِسْ نَوْد خِدْمَةْ عَدَنٍ. It says that he arrived in the land of Nod and he settled there, which is to the east of Eden. This is where that play on words comes back, and there's a play on words in basically every page of the Tanakh. Here there's a play on words between the word na, a wanderer, Nod, a wanderer, and Nod, the Eres Nod, the land of wandering. And we're going to get into more about what that means here in a bit, but the text tells us that it was to the east of Eden, and we're going to close that, and we're going to talk about it for a minute. So, and just for the record, I'm not going to get into this later, so I'll just go ahead and say it anyway. The land of Nod today, I believe, and this is based on the research of people like David Roll, people like Rabbi Michael Barbaron, who is a close personal friend of mine and a teacher of mine, one of my primary teachers. They both brought it up, they both mentioned it. Not that I've spoken to David Roll, but I've read his books. He mentions it as well. That Nod is probably the land of Nocht, which is in modern day Ardabil province of Iran. Okay, so we know roughly where it is, but in case we needed any kind of a signpost, okay, so the Torah tells us, well, it was to the east of Eden, right? So let me take a very quick look at my notes just so that I can see yes, where I was going with it. So back in chapter 3, if you remember my videos from back then, and I hope you do, because this is all sort of cumulative, it just sort of builds up as we go. So back in chapter 3, I sort of teased you a bit with, I believe it was not last week but the week before, with the statement that God said where the Nahash, his offspring, and Eve's offspring would basically be in conflict with each other. And there are many places you can see this all throughout the entire Tanakh, believe it or not. You could actually even see it today if you know who they are, if you know where the descendants of Cain eventually settled, and you understand that the people of Israel are descended from the other child of Eve. We can extrapolate that data, and you can understand why the conflict is still going on. But I spoke, I believe it was 2 weeks ago, about that incident where God says to the Nahash, listen, there's going to be conflict between your children and between her children, so beat it. And there are no other places in the Tanakh where that comes through as clear as what I just read to you. And some of you are probably just like, wait a minute, what do you mean? We're talking about Cain and Abel. They're brothers, right? Of course they are brothers. Yes, of course. What do you mean? How is it possible that it could be referring to the offspring of the Nahash and the offspring of Eve? These are brothers, same parents, right? Well, yes and no. Okay, so there are a lot of different traditions, and this is in blow your mind territory. Okay, so prepare to have your mind blown. I'm just going to throw it out there. You can choose to catch it or throw it back. Doesn't matter to me. It's one of the benefits. I was actually just telling someone this, I believe just this past week. One of the benefits of having a Jewish mindset, I guess, when it comes to religion is you're open to really a little bit of everything in terms of interpretations. You're open to possibilities that you personally don't believe, but at the same time they teach something relatively important, something relatively profound. So you're open to it. Like there are a lot of things in Kabbalistic tradition. I've mentioned this before. I'm not a Kabbalist. I don't really see a need for mysticism. But there are a lot of things in the mystical traditions that I like. I don't necessarily believe them, but I like them, and it makes for great teaching. And so I just sort of accept it as, okay, this is a possibility. Maybe not the possibility, but a possibility. Perhaps not the absolute certain way that it happened, but a possibility that teaches something that you would otherwise miss. Okay, so here's one of those things. In the Midrashic tradition, don't pick up rocks and start throwing them. Just let me finish the video first, okay? One of the Midrashic traditions that I've come across more than once, so it's in more than one source, is that Cain and Hevel, yes, they were brothers. And yes, they were twins, by the way. It's almost universally accepted in Jewish tradition that they were twins. But not identical twins. In fact, not only were they not identical twins, but they were twins who were sons of the same mother from the same pregnancy, but they had different fathers, right? Go back to the Nahash, the cult that Nahash was not cult, in a bad way. We're not talking, Heaven's Gate or anything like that. We're talking, just say a cultural, local cultural religion. It was a fertility cult. Okay, so it makes perfect sense that the priesthood, the shamans, would get to take part in that, right? According to this tradition, Cain is the son of the Nahash, while Hevel is the son of Adam. Okay? Now, I know what you're thinking, because I thought the exact same thing when I read it. No way. No way. Is that even possible? Yes, so it is actually. It's called heteropaternal superfecundation. Right? It's a big word that heteropaternal, different fathers, right? Superfecundation is it refers to multiple births or multiple pregnancies, I should say. So we're talking about multiple pregnancies in the same pregnancy, multiple fetuses in this same pregnancy from different fathers. Is that possible? Yes, it absolutely is. Now, you're going to see it more often in cats and dogs, stray cats and dogs. In fact, there is, I was reading, this is a really interesting statistic that said that among stray dogs, it's not uncommon that every dog in any given litter could have a different father, a different biological father. And that's really sort of yuck, right? All things considered. Given the average litter size is like, 3 or 4? It's really kind of something exciting's going on, right? As it happens, it can also happen in human populations too. Now, it's not as common nowadays, but there are recorded incidents of it happening in relatively present day. Okay, Okay, within my lifetime, right? So the last 40 years, it's happened multiple times. And how do I know it's happened multiple times? Well, because it had to be proven in court for it to even make a splash, right? As it happens, and this is just kind of an interesting thing, if you go back in time to roughly 2,000 years ago, and a little bit before that, during the Greek Empire. So Greek mythology is actually filled with a bunch of cases of gods or semi-divine, like demigods, who are twins who have different fathers but the same mother. Because if anybody's going to talk about it, let me tell you, it's the Greeks. Okay, those guys were really big into that sort of thing. They were into all sorts of different perversions that luckily we've evolved past. Okay, but if anybody's going to talk about it, I'm really glad the Greeks do it. But if anybody's going to talk about it, it's absolutely going to be the Greeks. Okay, now just to give you a little bit of science behind it, right? So I don't know, this is not my field of study, so I'm not as familiar with the process happening, first-hand knowledge, but basically here's how it works, right? So you've got a woman who has two, let's call them partners, right? Each of them provides sperm to fertilize two separate eggs. Now, mind you, this has to happen all within a very slim period of time. Okay, it has to happen within 48 hours of the time that the ovum drops. So you've got the possibility for at least two eggs to be fertilized by two fathers. That is a possibility. It's uncommon because in today's world we're more monogamous. That is the right word. Yeah, that's the right word. We're more monogamous. So I'm really glad that we've evolved past that point. But it was actually common enough in the ancient world that Greek mythology is filled with stories like it, right? So let's move on from that. Okay, where are my glasses at? Let me see. Oh yeah, and if you would like to read this Midrashic tradition in English, so there's actually a pretty good book that was compiled of different non-legal traditions, teaching traditions, Midrashic traditions, Aggadic traditions, that was compiled by a man named Louis Ginsburg, roughly, I want to say about 100 years ago. He compiled them all together in his book, The Legends of the Jews. I actually own it, and it's actually several volumes long, but I actually own it, which is how I'm familiar with it. But he's not the only one that mentions it. That's just kind of an interesting thing. So what's going on? We're going to get back into the story here. So what's going on in verse 8? Let's start with this. Why were Cain and Abel in the field to start with, right? So the verse opens, it says, Cain said to Abel. Then it doesn't tell us in the Masoretic. The Samaritan, yes, it tells us. The Septuagint, yes, it tells us. Cain says to his brother, hey, let's go out to the field, right? And so they go out to the field, and it happened while they were in the field that Cain rose up and he slew his brother. He killed his brother, right? So why did they go out to the field in the first place? Well, as it happens, there's a tradition for that. We have traditions for everything in Judaism. If you've ever seen Fiddler on the Roof, you understand that. Tradition is almost as important to our understanding of the Torah text as the text itself. Almost, but not quite. there's a tradition that says that Cain and Abel, like most brothers, they argued, they fought. I assume most brothers do that. I don't know. I don't have a brother. My boys, they don't really argue or fight with each other, but that's because the youngest one he's 4, so he's like, can't really compete with his 8-year-old brother yet. So it's no contest, right? But wait till they hit puberty. Things are going to get really fun then. So they argue, they fight, they, like brothers do. I argued and fought with my sisters growing up. There's a tradition that says that Abel, who was a shepherd, would allow his sheep to graze just wherever, okay? Including in the fields of Cain, his brother, right? His brother Cain is a farmer. He, farms crops, right? So let's say, just for argument's sake, so he's a wheat farmer, right? So he's farming wheat. And Abel is letting his sheep just graze wherever they want, and sometimes they would get into Cain's field. Cain would go to Abel and say, "Listen, man, your sheep are in my field again. What's going on? Why are you letting this happen?" And Abel would, and this is a tradition, this is actually in the Midrash, Abel would speak up and would say, something along the lines of, "Oh, well, I don't believe that," or he would make an excuse for, "Well, they must have grazed everywhere else already. What do you want me to do? Let them starve?" That sort of a thing. Occasionally, perhaps he even just, outright said, "Well, hey, man, that's your problem and not mine." Okay, so Abel is not the innocent little boy that we all sort of grew up thinking that he was. At least according to this tradition. He was complicit in what amounts to killing his brother, destroying his brother's livelihood, right? And so, according to one tradition, Cain says to Abel, "Hey, man, your sheep are in my field again. Why are you letting them do this?" And Abel's like, I don't believe it. And Cain says, "Okay, well then let's go out to the field. We'll see for yourself," right? And so they get out there, and yeah, sure enough, there are Abel's sheep eating all of Cain's crops, right? Cain looks at his brother and he goes, "What are you going to do about it, man?" "Oh, well, I can't really, I can't just, what, do you want me to let them start?" That whole thing again. Cain, rightfully so, is upset. But he lets his temper get the best of him. He pushes his brother pushes back. Because he's not about to let his big brother, get the upper hand. That's just, male competitiveness, right? Sometimes I think the world would be better if, if women were in charge of everything, but then I remember that, no, that doesn't work either. Sometimes people are just garbage, sometimes we just suck. Let's just be honest about that, right? So they start fighting. The pushing turns into blows. They're exchanging blows. They're hitting each other. They're fighting. They're pushing, and it's an all-out fight, right? It's an all-out brawl, and they're just going at it. And I imagine in my head, mostly based off of the text where it says that Cain rose up against Hevel, that it says that he rose up, implies to me that they took turns beating each other to the ground and getting up and then continuing the fight, right? Kind of reminds me of Peter Griffin and the Giant Chicken in Family Guy, right? If you've never seen it, just look up Peter Griffin fights chicken, right? And in YouTube, and you'll. It's just a running gag over like seasons, and why, nobody's really sure, but it's there, okay? And that's what I imagine this fight being like. It just sort of, Cain's knocked down. He gets up, knocks Hevel down. Hevel gets up, he knocks Cain down, and so they're fighting and fighting and fighting, back and forth and back and forth. Cain gains the upper hand. How do I know this? Because the text says that Cain rose up over his brother. And he beats him to the ground, and according to this Midrashic tradition, Hevel hits his head on a rock. Dazed and confused and very likely bleeding out of a fractured skull, Hevel stands back up to continue the fight, and as he looks up at his brother, then comes the death blow. Now at first, Cain probably thought to himself, oh, I just knocked him down, I'll let him get up, and then I'll continue to annihilate him, right? Figuratively annihilate, obviously not literally, although he did do that. But then, when Hevel doesn't move, Cain starts to get concerned. And I imagine him suddenly realizing, the gravity of the situation, just suddenly collapsing in on him, and him suddenly realizing, my God, what have I done? God warned me about this. What have I done? And as the story goes, Cain killed Abel. It's very sad. It's a very sad story that Cain allowed himself to be overcome with this just violent rage, this blinding rage, and he rose up and he killed his brother. Now, it wasn't a real murder. Okay, and if you pay attention to the text there, the name that's used for God in this passage is Hashem. It's his personal name, right? Which always connotes mercy. God is being merciful to him. What does God not do? God does not give the death penalty. And in fact, later on in the Torah, God would say any murderer, death penalty. If he murders his brother, definitely death penalty. But, and this is just kind of a nod to a later law that would later pop up in the Torah, because again, I've mentioned this before, you can see all the laws of the Torah play out in the book of Genesis. You don't actually need the other 4 books, but the other 4 books are kind of sort of important as well. No, they are important. They're all very important. No kind of sort of to it. They're all very important. But, we see that we can actually discern all the 613 mitzvot from the entire Torah in the book of Genesis. And there are actually a couple of examples that I've skipped over. Because, frankly, they pop up so often. But here, there's a nod to the laws for manslaughter. Okay? So in the Torah, it tells us, this is much, much later on, it tells us that if there is someone who kills someone, I believe the text actually says he kills his brother, meaning his fellow Israelite, if he kills someone and it's accidental, or perhaps it was a fit of rage like this, it was a crime of passion, that sort of a thing, which, it's just like Cain and Abel, right? He's so overcome with blinding rage that he just, can't control his temper, and he rises up and he kills his brother. He's not given the death penalty. No, he's actually exiled. He's sent to a city of refuge, and we're going to talk about that a little bit again next week, because we're going to see a reference to that in next week's reading. But I think it's next week. It might be the week after, but don't quote me on that. I believe it's next week. And we see the same thing here. God, rather than giving Cain the death penalty, he actually goes way out of his way to not allow Cain to be killed. Which, on the one hand, that's kind of a jerk move. I mean, because, like, no, you're going to live with the knowledge that you killed your brother. I mean, that's just a mean thing to do to someone, right? But I'm not God, so I can't make that judgment there. I can, just not rightfully. So God exiles him rather than allowing him to be killed. And not only does he exile him and not allow, not just issue the death penalty right then and there. No, in fact, he says, I'm going to protect you from anyone who comes up in the future who may, want to kill you. I'm going to put a mark on you. Now, I don't know what this mark was. I suspect, this is what I think it is, and this is just my opinion. You could take it or leave it. You can, if you like it, definitely adopt it, keep it. If you don't like it, okay, throw it back. I don't care. You're not going to offend me. Not that way. But I suspect that what we're dealing with when it talks about this mark, this sign, the Hebrew text here is oath, I suspect that what it's talking about here is a scar. I think that Cain was wounded in this conflict with his brother to the extent that his face or something visible was cut badly, bad enough to where it left a scar that was visible, from however far away. You don't even have to try hard to find it. You just look at him and you're like, ooh, that's a scar. Now, how is that going to keep people away? How is that going to keep people from trying to kill Cain, right? Well, because a man who survived that wound, well, he's going to be pretty hard to kill. I better not mess with him, right? So let me see what else I've got in my notes. Yeah, we are done. Okay, so that's all I've got, apparently. Join us next week for the exciting conclusion. Same bat time, same bat chat. I just wanted an opportunity to say that. But yeah, join us next week, or join me next week, or us. Maybe I'm schizophrenic today, I don't know. I'm not. Come back next week, and we'll finish this story out properly. Hopefully we'll finish the chapter next week, but don't quote me on that. Don't hold me to it. Because we may need to break things down a little bit more. But that's all I've got for today. So if you enjoyed this video, please give this video a like. Feel free to share it on the social media platform of your choice, whether that be texting, Facebook, X, formerly known as Twitter. I love it when I read stuff like that in articles online, because it's like, oh, X, formerly Twitter. It reminds me of, the artist formerly known as Prince. It's just like, why, man? Only this one actually makes a little bit more sense because it was fairly recent when that happened. But yeah, if you have not already subscribed, please do so. If you enjoyed this video. If you didn't enjoy this video, I'm not going to subject you to more videos that you will not enjoy. Okay? Use your judgment. Viewer discretion is advised. Just kidding. Definitely subscribe to this channel. Make sure that your notifications for this channel are turned on. If you're on Facebook, that's wonderful. So am I. And coincidentally, so will this video be, at least by tomorrow, perhaps by tonight. It all depends. Depends on how much time I have before I get sleepy and need to go to bed. Because I do work tomorrow. Unfortunately. No, I enjoy what I do, so it's very fortunate that I get to work. Some people just don't have that ability. But where was I going with that? Oh yeah, if you're on Facebook, wonderful, so am I. Come find me. Just search an unorthodox Jew. Like and or follow the page. You can comment on anything you'd like on there. I do put some content out exclusively on the Facebook page that never sees YouTube. Good stuff though. And I think that was everything. Oh yeah. If you have questions, I love questions. I have answers. Might not always be the right answers. I can't promise you I will always have the right answers, but I can promise you I will always have an answer. You can comment with your questions either on here or on Facebook if you would rather not have it be public. Okay, so go to Facebook, like my page, and then you can send me a private message. First of all, you should say hello. It's always proper form. Introduce yourself maybe. And I had somebody one time that was just like, he disagreed with what I said, but like the very first thing he said was like, hello, my name is, and then says his name. He's like, and I live here, and I just wanted to say I think you're completely wrong about this, and here's why. And I was like, my God, this is like the best hate mail I've ever gotten. Because it's not hate mail. It's actually very well put together, very well founded, and it led to a discussion, a fruitful discussion. And I'm glad to admit that I'm glad to say that he still likes the page. So I don't know if that's on purpose or not, but I'm assuming it is. But ask your questions in the messages, and I'll respond. It may take me a little bit. I am quite busy during the week, so if I don't get back to you quickly, within a few hours or so, you are looking at a few days probably, because I am quite busy during the week. I work in air conditioning, and the hours are really sort of, sometimes they're reasonable. Sometimes, I've been out until 10 o'clock at night before doing work on people's air conditioners. So sometimes the hours are long, sometimes they're short, sometimes I get off early and everybody's happy. Last Friday I got off early. I was very happy. Always happy for an early weekend, right? Anyway, that's all I've got. So until next time, shalom.